纯的这个。
哪个？
这个没。
这是。
你看，这是上次。
就是那个矮一点胖一点的那个。
这上次我们在选上认识的。
对，就是他。他也报那个了？
没有。他是报的那个小妹子报。昨天吃火锅想那个舌头烫了一下。昨天吃火锅想舌头烫了一下。
昨天吃火锅了吗？
是的，你不知道啊？
啊，羊蝎子是吧？
对，还蛮好吃的，是吧？
终于也加个 script 了。
And then at the end of the day, or later on, we're going to look at JavaScript. We're actually just going to look at cloud computing, providing a running lecture. So anyway, without further ado, let's look at JavaScript in the web browser. So we know that the web browser is the most common execution environment for JavaScript. There are lots of them: CVs, Node for running on the server side, run on the command line, all those different execution environments, but by far the most commonly used is the web browser. The runtime environment in the web browser has a number of special features, and particularly it was designed to enable JavaScript to interact with the user interface. So a web browser is primarily there to display the contents of a web page written as HTML code. The JavaScript exists there to be able to make that web page do things, make it interactive. So the execution environment basically lets you script the web page. If we look at what is inside a web browser, we'll see that it's built up into layers. Actually, there are 3 layers. So the web page has these 3 layers. First of all, there's the content layer. The content layer is quite literally the HTML, the XHTML, the HTML5. The code that makes up the web page itself. On top of that is the presentation layer. This is what makes the web page render in a fancy way. It makes it pretty, it makes the text centered, it makes the different colors, so on and so forth. And that's scripted through a language called Cascading Style Sheet CSS. And on top of that, then there's the behavior layer, so the third layer is the behavior layer, and that's what JavaScript's for. It's all about scripting the behavior. So you've got these 3 different languages. You've got HTML for describing the content, CSS for describing how the content renders, and JavaScript for describing how the content behaves. I guess I should point out that JavaScript itself can script the other bits as well. So you can, we'll see some examples later, but you can write JavaScript to change the content layer. You can write JavaScript to change the CSS layer dynamically. If we look at the behavior layer in a bit more detail, so it enables JavaScript to do a number of things. So the primary purpose is that it enables JavaScript to interact with the content layer through an interface from the document object model. And this is a thing that was developed way back in the late 90s, and it shows it's got the strangest interface ever. We'll look at that in a bit more detail later. So with this, with your JavaScript, you can modify the presentation and the style of the page, also using DOM, so you can change the CSS rules. And And then perhaps the most exciting thing you can do is interact with the user by attaching events to elements in the web page. So, how do you do it? How many people in the room have written a web page with a bit of JavaScript in before? Okay, let's split the question around. How many people haven't? Virtually no one. Okay, so you pretty much know this already. Well, the obvious thing is that you write your JavaScript within a pair of script tags. Okay? In your HTML. And there are two different ways of doing it. You can use a script tag to load JavaScript in an external file, and it will display the content of that file. And the way that you do that is by specifying a source attribute on your script tag, which is the name of the file. The other way of doing it is to write inline code. So in your HTML page, you write the JavaScript code itself. And to do that, you just don't have a source attribute, but everything in between the script tags is your JavaScript code. So two different ways. Generally speaking, this one's preferred. It has a number of advantages. In particular, it doesn't mix the content and the behavior. Because otherwise, if you use this one, you're actually mixing your HTML code with your JavaScript code, all in the same file, and it could get a bit messy. But for short things, experiments, script hacks, relatively simple pieces of code, will be find this used a lot of the time. Okay. So the script tag, well, the specification enables them to go anywhere, as long as they're within the HTML tags. They can be within the HTML tags, they can be within the body tags, they can be anywhere you want, as long as it's properly structured. It's common practice, though, to put them in the head. If you're going to write if you're going to import lots of external files, you typically do that in the head, between the head tags. If you don't put it in the head tags, well, actually, irrespective of where you put it, when the HTML interpreter is reading through the HTML and it encounters the script tag, it will load and run that code immediately. Okay? So if you put a script tag halfway down the page, your HTML interpreter inside your browser will start reading at the top, because David gets first, it will carry on reading, and it will be parsing that HTML as it goes, and starting to render the web page, starting to put together the web page in memory, and starting to do the layout and everything. When it gets to your JavaScript code, it will run it. It might, at that point, not have finished loading the contents of the web page. That could be a really bad thing, because it might mean that your JavaScript code runs before all of the contents of your web page have been loaded. Now, if let's say, for example, that your JavaScript code refers to part of your web page, it could refer to part of the web page that you haven't yet been loaded, and obviously it wouldn't work. And this could lead to some kind of interesting behavior, because for one user who's on a really fast computer, maybe with a fast internet connection, it works all the time. For another user, it may be working intermittently. Good luck with sort of debugging that. It'd be really, really difficult. So, you get around that using events. And in particular, you use a thing called the onload event. And I'll show you an example in a moment of how you can do that. Okay, so last time, I think it was last time, I mentioned that in these JavaScript environments, particularly in the JavaScript environment in the web browser, there's a variable called global, and this is the global object of the web browser. So every JavaScript environment has a global object. That's where all of the global values and all of the methods that are available for you to run and call are exposed. Well, in the web browser, it's called window, and the window object itself has a property called window, which refers to itself, which means that in whatever scope you're in, you can always get the window. So, in a web browser, the window object contains all of the methods and functions that you might need to interact with the browser and with the web page that's being currently displayed. And all of the globals are there as well. Yeah, I've already said it's self-referential, but this basically means that all web browsers have a function called alert that you can call. I'll show you this in a second. But calling alert, calling window.alert are the same thing. Okay, exactly the same thing. So, what kinds of what kinds of things do web browsers offer you? What kinds of methods do they offer? Well, let's start at the beginning. So, every web browser is guaranteed to give you the ability to pop up a dialog box with an informational message to the user. And that's exactly what that alert function is for. So, if in the JavaScript code you say alert hello world, it will display a box with an OK button. Let me show you. So if I switch to the browser and in the JavaScript debugger in the browser I can sort of run code ad hoc in this web page. If I do this, I'm just going to call alert hello world. It pops up a dialog box. Be warned, this is a modal dialog box. It pops up in front of that browser web page and it stops me interacting with that browser web page until I hit the close button. Okay? So from the point of view of user interface design, this is quite a bad thing, because it's interrupting the user's flow. So you don't tend to find these used very much. Certainly in sort of modern JavaScript, modern HTML, there are better ways of doing dialog boxes than this. So that being said, there are a couple of other methods that all browsers offer by default. The next one's called return, and that pops up a dialog box where you pose a question and it gives you two buttons, yes and no, or okay and cancel. And finally, you can get the browser to pop up a dialog box that prompts the user for a response in the form of a text box or something like it. Most, I think pretty much all modern browsers offer the ability to debug your JavaScript code from within the browser. So a second ago we saw the debugger in the Safari browser. That's something you have to turn on, but it's available to everybody. Same thing exists in Internet Explorer, Edge, Firefox, and so on and so forth. So all of these browsers have the ability to do debugging. You might have to turn it on. With these debuggers, all the browsers offer a little bit of help to you as a programmer. As one of the global objects, one of the properties of the global object, they all have another object called console. And console is something that you can use for tracing the flow of your program, finding out where it's going wrong, because it can do logging. So with the console object, you can print log messages, and the browser will keep track of this. We can do things like print objects to the console log. Let me show you again. So if I do console.log, Safari says they just ran it. It ran the console.log thing, and hopefully. My issue of not knowing how to. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's how we can see it, but here, this is telling me, because of the console log, and it's telling me that it ran that console log statement and printed out yellow in this case, but we can print out anything. Okay, so if we embed console.log messages throughout our code, we can trace the way that it's run. Okay, it's just a pretty standard debugging technique. This is, in web browsers, I would sort of argue that it's useful. It's useful for you as a developer, but it's kind of the kind of thing you turn off after doing the development. When you're writing Node applications, so Node, which is running on the server side, also has the console functionality, that's what you're going to use this a lot. Okay, you're going to be using console.log an awful lot to figure out what's going on. Okay, slides. Right, what about the web page? What about the web page itself? How do you get to the content? How do you get to the DOM? Well, within the window object, there's a property called document, and that refers to the currently loaded document. That document object actually represents a tree structure. It's a tree structure that represents all of the HTML. So here's an example. It's an HTML code, so it's HTML tags inside, enclosing body tags, enclosing header tag, and H1 tag. There's a div, there's a paragraph, no div. In terms of what the document object inside the browser gives you, well, it gives you a programmatic interface to this tree representation from that pile of HTML, something like this. In that tree, so that tree itself is called the DOM tree or the DOM hierarchy. It has nodes. The parts of the tree, sometimes referred to as elements. The DOM itself gives you the ability to manipulate these elements, to do things with them, to select them, change them, move them around, all sorts of things. How does it do that? Well, it does it through the interface, which was, as I said, it was kind of created back in the late 90s, so it epitomizes late 90s programming in many ways, so it's not very well designed, quite difficult to use. We'll see that later. But it's got lots and lots of methods that enable you to do things. So first of all, there are methods for creating new nodes. So you can create a new node and you can insert it into the DOM hierarchy dynamically. So this would enable you, for example, to add a new piece of information to a web page. You could programmatically add an image to a web page, for example. There are methods like getElementById for selecting specific elements within that DOM hierarchy. There are all sorts of different ways of selecting things. You can select things like class name. So if your HTML specifies elements with class attributes, you can select them all using that. You can get things by name. You can get things by tag name, so you can select all of the H1 header elements, for example. And that's probably a good time to sort of demonstrate that. So back into Safari, if I just run this in the log. So you probably can't read the code, but what the code says is it's going to create a variable code. It's going to do that, fill that variable by calling document.getElements by tag name H1. So it's going to select all of the H1 elements in my web page. Okay? And then there's a couple of console lines underneath. What does the result say? Well, so the first console log line said print the length of the array that was returned by that selection. And in this case, there's only one H1 element in that web page, so there's only one. The text content of the node, we haven't talked about that yet, but the text content of the H1 node is the string hello world. Quite sensible. But of course, we can dynamically do things. If I want to, I can dynamically change part of the web page. So what I've written is, and that's very, very small, but I've written H1s in brackets 0 to refer to the first element of the array. Got text content equals hello world, and I've added loads of exclamation marks. And if I run that, immediately the web page content changes. Okay, so this is really giving you the ability to start to manipulate a web page dynamically. Right, what else can you do? Well, the document itself has loads of properties that enable you to explore things. So every document object has a thing called body, which points you at the body of the web page. That's the bit between the body tags. It's got a thing called anchors, which gives you all of the hyperlinks. So quick access to the hyperlinks. They're the ones, in particular, the hyperlinks that have got name attributes. Document.links give you access to all the hyperlinks that have got href attributes, all the ones that link to other web pages. If your web page has got HTML form elements in it, document.forms give you quick access to all the forms. Document.images gives you access to all of the images, so on and so forth. So they're basically shortcuts to accessing parts of the DOM really, really quickly without having to use one of those get whatever methods. There's also things to get information about the page, so you can get the domain of the page. That's the part of the URL that specifies the server that the page is served from. You get the page title that's specified in the head of the HTML. The URL, the full URL of the page. So all of these things are you can get. These ones you can't change. Okay, so they're read only. If you get hold of a node within JavaScript, so you get a ID or whatever to select some nodes and you grab hold of a node, then each of those nodes have properties. And those properties and methods enable you to navigate around. So there's all sorts of things. You can clone a node, so you make a copy of it. If you make a copy of a node, it won't immediately affect the web page. So all it'll do is copy that node in memory, but until you insert it back into the DOM tree, it won't change the web page. That's kind of important. But there are all sorts of methods. So there are methods for inspecting the node, checking whether it's got any children, whether it's got any attributes, comparing it against other nodes, see if two nodes are the same or two nodes are equal. Manipulating the DOM tree. So you can take a node and you can add another node before or after it, add it as a child, remove the children, place children, and so on and so forth. In terms of the properties of the node, then there are quite a lot as well. So there are things like shortcuts. For any node, you can find out the document that owns it. It's just a shortcut at the top of the DOM tree. You can find out the child nodes of the node. So yeah, not only can you inspect whether it's got any children, but you can actually look at the children. You can quickly get to the first child node. You can get to the last child node. You can get to the siblings, so the nodes to the left and to the right of it of the current node in the DOM hierarchy, and to the parent node, so you can move up, so on and so forth. But basically, all these properties describe the location of the current node you're looking at in the DOM hierarchy. You've also got properties that describe the content of the node. So we already saw text content, so we manipulate text content a minute ago. But there are other things, so we can change dynamically the attributes of the node. We can change its node value, so that means that if a node potentially contains more HTML, we can add more HTML bits to it. So on and so forth. Okay, so that's pretty much what you can do. I can't remember actually off the top of my head whether there was a demo of some more stuff. Yeah. So if I go back to the web browser, we've obviously manipulated this web page. We'll have it through only by adding some exclamation marks to it. Let's add a little bit of new content. So I'll just paste the code. But what this code is doing is going to create a new paragraph. So it's going to create a new div. It's going to get hold of the existing paragraph. So if I bring up the code in here, okay, so this is the HTML code of that page. Before we changed it, of course. So now it had a lot of exclamation marks after it. But you see that there's a paragraph there with ID para. Basically, what we're going to do is insert a div after that. And then we're going to put some content in that div and it's going to change the web page. We're going to dynamically add new stuff to the web page. And if I do that, you see exactly that's what happens. So we've added a new div element with the content, the text content, and new div element to that web page dynamically. Okay, we'll come back to that again in a minute. So that's the kind of manipulation you can do. I haven't shown you manipulation of CSS rules, but that's also quite easy. There's a .css property, and you can change the style of the node. Events are kind of what makes JavaScript in browsers interesting. So events are the things that actually enable you to give behavior to the parts of the web page and make them respond to the user clicking on them, make them respond to the user moving the mouse over them, so on and so forth. every event is associated with a DOM element. And a DOM element typically represents something that's visible within a web page. There are two ways that events can be fired. They can be fired directly by the user interacting with a DOM element, or they can be fired by the browser itself. So you can programmatically fire events. You could programmatically select an element in a web page and fire an event, for example. Or potentially you could do things like set up a timer that fires events on a regular basis. There are loads and loads of events. So these are just some of them. In fact, these are the old ones, because if you look at the modern specs, then because everybody's got tablets and phones that have got web browsers on them, there's lots of new events for touch events, because we're all using touch screens. But you kind of get a bit of a picture here. So you've got page events, on load, on unload. So that happens, get fired when the page is finished loading, when the page is being closed. You've got mouse events, on click. That's pretty sensible, you clicking on an object. But you've got other things, so things that look for double clicks, things that look for pressing the mouse button down. You're releasing the mouse button, they can be separate events. On mouse over, when you move the mouse cursor over something. On mouse out, when you move the mouse cursor away from a DOM element. You've got focus events, so these happen when a control on the web page has focus. So if it's a text box, if you're typing into that text box, it's got focus. If you move on to the next text box, the first one loses focus, or the technical term for losing focus is blurring. So there are events you can attach there. There are keyboard events, so you can listen to key presses, keep going down, keep going up. If you've got HTML forms in your web browser, then you've got a submit button. You can listen for that an event that's fired when that form is submitted. So on and so forth. So there are lots of different ways in which you can add these eventlessness to the DOM. The simplest, by far the simplest, is to write it into the HTML. But this comes with all of the caveats about making your code maintainable and readable. It potentially pollutes it a little bit. But here's an example. We've got some HTML. We've defined a script in line inside the head tag, which has got a function in it called say hello, which calls the alert method. Later on down here, we've got the body of the web page. The body's got a div inside it, and we want that div to be clickable by the user. And we literally, by using the on-click attribute property of that div element, we can assign a function that will be fired. In this case, we say that the function is going to be called the full hello function. We load this page in a web browser. We'll see this div rendered. If we click on it, it'll pop the alert that level up. Okay, so that's by far the easiest way of doing this. But we might not, in many cases, want to do it that way. We might want to do it dynamically. We might actually want to program the web page so we add JavaScript event handlers dynamically to all of the elements, or to any of the elements. And you can do that as well. So here's an example. In this particular web page, if we look at the body, first of all, we've got an on-load handler. So this is a piece of telling us that a piece of code is going to run when the page is finished loading. And in this particular case, it's going to call the init function. When the page is finished loading. Inside the body is a div, and we've given that div an ID, so we can easily select it. If we look at the init function itself, you'll see that the init function gets the DOM element by ID, so it's actually selecting this element here, and then it adds dynamically the onset handler, and it sets it to the say hello function. Note that the brackets are missing because it's passing the function, not calling the function. And this, if we run this, will behave in exactly the same way. Slightly more code, so I'll go back to the previous one. Slightly more code, but inevitably slightly more maintainable, especially considering we can move the code in the script tag into a completely separate file if we wanted to. So it makes for better separation of code. Another thing you need to know, so whenever you whenever you assign an event handler, so a method that responds to an event, to a DOM element, when that event happens, obviously your method will get called. If you want to, you can refer to, well, basically a parameter is passed back when that method's called. Most of the time you'll ignore this completely, but it can take useful information. So this parameter is called the event object. In this version of the code, you can see that the function that would be called when the event happens is taking in a parameter called an event in this case. So that event object tells you about the event. It tells you all sorts of things. It tells you like what object caused the event to fire, what time the event happened. In fact, if we look at the so here's a relatively recent version of the spec. We can see all sorts of things. So the key things here, I think about target. So the element that triggered the event, that would be the DOM element that triggered the event. Timestamp, when it happened, the name of the event. So whether it was an on-click event, or whether it was a mouse over event, etc. There's a shortcut thing called view that points to the window object. There's lots of things here. There's a bit of a problem there. Inevitably, there's always a problem with web browsers. There are lots of different web browsers, and they all behave differently. So you pick your favorite web browser, and your friend picks their favorite web browser. If they're different, then the event object is likely to be different as well. Actually, many of the things I told you about are likely to behave slightly differently. There are specifications, but there are many different ways of interpreting those specifications. As time has gone on, things have got better, the browsers have become more compliant, but I guess many of you in the room will still remember Internet Explorer before it was replaced with Edge. Internet Explorer had a terrible reputation for not following the standards properly, and Microsoft basically inventing their own standards and doing crazy things. This has led to all sorts of problems. So making it really, really difficult for you as JavaScript developers to write code that will work cross-platform in different browsers. And this is still a problem today. Things have got better. Things have got a lot better, actually. But there are still problems. So the JavaScript environments are still not necessarily compatible. I think there is definitely been some convergence. But especially when it comes to new features, then some of the browsers are really good at integrating new features. Chrome's perhaps the best example. Chrome's always on the leading edge. It's always incorporating new features as they appear. Firefox is pretty good too. Safari is actually pretty terrible because it has such a slow release cycle. I mean, the other browsers are released quite regularly. Safari doesn't really get out there a big update until there's an operating system update, so it tends to happen every year. So there are some things in Safari that won't, well, some things that Safari might support that other browsers will. So lots of problems. You have to be a bit careful still. And really, you have to apply workarounds. And you're lucky. So a lot of people, a lot of talented JavaScript programmers have come up with solutions for you. And the way that they've come up with solutions is to write different JavaScript frameworks that automate tasks that deal with the problems of cross-browser compatibility behind the scenes, so that you don't have to worry about it. So if you're going to be writing lots of JavaScript in a web browser in particular, then you're most likely going to use a framework. So these frameworks have also advantages. They deal with the cross-platform problems. They bring richer interfaces to you dealing with the web page. So if you've ever had to write more than 10 lines of DOM code, you're going to get you'll be really fed up because you've got these long messages to get element by ID, so on and so forth. It's a really, really funny interface. If you want to start navigating the DOM tree, it's really bizarre because you have to find a node, you go to parent node, you go left, you go right. The way that you navigate is really, really strange. So these frameworks that have been developed offer you better ways of getting to the element that you're interested in, or the elements that you're interested in a much more sane and sensible way. And fundamentally, from your point of view, they leave you writing tighter and cleaner code. Less code as well. So there are loads and loads of frameworks. And actually, these are, I picked a handful, and admittedly, these are the old ones. Okay. So did anyone read the blog post that I sent? Yeah. So that blog post was talking about some of the newer frameworks, right? Although I think the conclusion at the end of it was just use jQuery. I think that's still a sound piece of advice on the whole. It depends what you're doing though. So there are all these different frameworks. They're all still actively developed. Prototype.js is perhaps one of the oldest, although it does some very, very funky things. In particular, it manipulates the prototype of the object instance, which is a bit of a naughty thing to do because it means that all of your objects change. UE was the Yahoo user interface library that was developed. Some of the others, AJ, Mutual was partly sponsored by Microsoft back in the day. The one that people really talk about though is jQuery. So in the next lecture, we're going to look at jQuery in a bit more detail and kind of show you roughly how to use it, show you some of the things it can do. One of the big criticisms, so again, for those of you who read the blog post, one of the big criticisms, which is true, of using any of these frameworks like jQuery in particular, is that it will lead to spaghetti code. So code where it's really difficult to follow the flow. That's inevitably true. I think fundamentally what you need to understand is that it depends on what kind of application you're writing as to which library you would choose. jQuery is great for doing little things to web pages to make them interactive. jQuery comes with an extra library called jQuery UI, which makes it really easy to make nice user interface, or add nice user interface elements to web pages. The moment you want to write something really complicated, then that's where jQuery kind of goes wrong. Maybe some of the other frameworks offer things that jQuery doesn't. But at the same time, those other frameworks, they have their own caveats. Although they're not written into your JavaScript, for example. They're written in other things, so they require you to use other languages that potentially compile down to JavaScript, things like TypeScript. So TypeScript is a variant of JavaScript that supports static typing. But in order to run it in a web browser, you compile it with a compiler that converts it to JavaScript. So it's an interesting landscape. There are no clear-cut answers, but jQuery is still quite a good way to go, even though it's quite old. Okay, that's a bit early, but I'm going to end there. So in the next lecture, we're going to look at jQuery in a bit of detail, and we're going to look at how we can also do client-server communication using something called WebSockets. And then, as I said, after lunch, we're going to change tack completely, and we're going to look at cloud computing and the whole sort of overview. Any questions? Okay, so I'll see you in a couple of hours.